Okay, so today we're starting 4.2. We were just solving for percentages using equations. Today we're going to be looking at horizontal and vertical lines and solving equations using those lines or use them to help us solve those kind of problems. So one of the main takeaways today is a horizontal line always is in the form y equals k. A vertical line is always in the form x equals h. So k being some number and h just being some number. They're constants. It's any given number. But again, we're going to be using these horizontal and vertical lines. So we're going to be looking graphically and use them to help us solve different problems. So horizontal lines have an equation in the form y equals k. So horizontal, remember, that means left to right. So why is that? Why do horizontal lines always have the form y equals k? Well, let's take a little look-see. If I think of a horizontal line, let's just draw one in here. And I list the different points that are on this line. I don't need to list all of them. That would in fact be impossible. But this would be -5, 4, -2, 4, 0, 4, 1, 4, 7, 4, 5, 4. You get the idea. What is always staying the same? What is never changing? That y value. So every pair has an x and a y. Y is always the same. It's a constant. It's always 4. So y equals 4. That is why the horizontal line has an equation y equals some number. In this case, that some number is 4 because every single point on this horizontal line, y remains the same. It is always 4. Now your x values are forever changing. They are all real numbers, in fact. So then vertical lines have an equation in the form x equals h. Again, h just being some number, and vertical, remember that is up and down. Well, why is that true? Well, let's look at this on the graph again. Let's look at a vertical line, and let's just say, we'll draw that one in. So if I go to label some points, 1, 1, 3, 1, whoops, x, y, 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 5, 1, -2, 1, -5. You get the idea again. What is never changing? What is always the same number? What is constant? Your x value. Your x value is always 1. So no matter what point we pick on this line, x must always equal 1. Y, again, is all real numbers because it's going forever up and forever down. So a vertical line is always in the form of x equals some number because any point I were to pick on that line, x remains the same. All right, so if we were to ask to graph x equals -1 in the coordinate plane below, so let's take a look. First off, they're telling me x must equal -1. So to get comfortable with this, let's just go to the x-axis at -1. X must always be -1, and then say, okay, does it make sense to draw a line left or right? No, because that would include the x value 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, -1, -2, -3. X can only be -1. It must be a vertical line. So any point I pick on this line, x is always -1, -1, 5, -1, 4, -1, -2. So this is going to be a vertical line. Notice in the form x equals, in this case, -1. Give an equation describing all the points in the line that's been graphed below. Well, if we go to this line, what is every single point on here? What is consistent? What remains the same? What is constant with every single point? Your x values are always changing, but your y value remains the same. It stays at -3. So y equals -3. No matter what point I pick on here, y is always -3. So the equation that describes all the points is y equals -3 because then that includes every single x value. No matter what point I pick, y is always -3. Writing an equation for a given set of points. So we want to go through and look. We know every pair has an x and a y. Well, is there something that we notice? Hopefully you guys see, hey, this y value is always 12. So the equation of this line must be y equals 12 because no matter what point I pick on this line, y is always going to equal positive 12. So if you notice, y is always a positive 12, no matter what point we pick on the line, therefore the equation is y equals 12, which means this is a horizontal line. Alright. And then, where will the lines y equals 2 and x equal -3 intersect? Where will they cross? Where will they meet? Well, if we look at this on a coordinate plane, just draw a rough sketch. But make sure you label your x and y axes because it can get confusing, especially with horizontal and vertical lines. So y equals 2. So y must be 2. I go to my y-axis. The only way y is always 2 if that is horizontal. So y equals 2. X equals -3. The only way x is always -3 is if we have a vertical line. So no matter what point I pick on here, x is always -3. So where do they intersect? Where do they cross? Right at that point when x is -3 and y is 2. Well, notice, we know that they have to be horizontal and vertical lines because of the form of the equation. So they're telling us exactly what x is and exactly what y is. So technically, we don't even need a graph to answer this question. Must cross at -3, 2. It just makes sense. Horizontal, vertical, where are those two lines going to intersect? Okay, very last one. Dalton has $1,400 to take to college for spending money. If he spends $100 per week, how many weeks will his money last? So what don't we know? How many weeks? We don't know how many weeks, so that is my variable, that is my unknown. So I can say W equals number of weeks. Now tomorrow we're going to be looking at this graphically, but today we're just going to solve it like we always have, or how we've been setting them up. The total that we have is $1,400. $100 per week is what we are going to spend. So how do I solve for W? We just divide both sides by 100. So W equals 14 weeks. So Dalton has 14 weeks worth of spending money. So again, like I said, tomorrow we're going to look at this as a graph. So how can that horizontal and vertical line help us to also see this, that 14 weeks is our solution. So until then, see you tomorrow.